At 28, Claire Bennett was blindsided by life. Laid off, single, pressured into a quickie marriage with a guy from high school she barely knew. She figured married life would be quiet, maybe even boring, until the day she stumbled across an old shoebox while reorganizing her shelves. Inside was an unsigned love letter. The handwriting felt hauntingly familiar. A confession that came years too late, or maybe just in time. Back when she was 18, she'd had a secret crush. Turns out he'd been in love with her too. They never knew. They never said it. Until now. This is a soft, nostalgic story about lost chances, late love, and the quiet power of fate. Can the past still write a future? If you love emotional, heartwarming stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Let's dive into a tale that will stir your heart and stay with you long after the last word. With just 5 months left before Claire turned 29, everyone around her seemed to be getting married or having babies. Except her. She'd lost her job after a round of corporate layoffs, and her mom insisted she move back home to figure things out. That figuring out turned out to be her mom ambushing her with one blind date after another. 3 in a single day. Every day. One afternoon, Claire showed up to yet another matchup, only to come face to face with a familiar face from the past, Ryan Carter. Back in high school, Ryan was popular, charming, and had the kind of face that turned heads. Claire remembered him vaguely. They'd shared classes but never much conversation. Rumor had it he'd dated someone back then, someone he really liked. And yet here he was too. On a blind date. Ryan recognized her instantly. The moment was awkward, clumsy, and a little surreal. Claire tried to ease the tension. Wow. Small world. You too, huh? He gave a half smile, lips tugging at one corner. Yeah. My family's been writing me about settling down. Didn't expect to see you here. Claire laughed softly, unsure what else to say. Yeah? Funny. Silence stretched out. She finally stood up, giving him an out. Well, I guess that's enough awkwardness for today. But before she could leave, Ryan looked at her and asked, "How many of these setups have you been on?" She blinked. What? He leaned back in his chair, still watching her. I mean, how many blind dates have your folks dragged you into? Claire rolled her eyes. Too many. I think I hit double digits just this week. Ryan gave a quiet chuckle. Figures. We're both just faces in a lineup, huh? Thinking back to the string of people she'd been set up with recently, Claire couldn't help but frown instinctively. Ryan didn't say a word, just sat there calmly, his dark eyes clear and unreadable. Time didn't seem to have touched him at all. So, she asked slowly, pointing to herself, you're saying you want to pretend to date me to get your family off your back? She had a feeling that's where this was going, but part of her still needed to ask. After all, Ryan Carter wasn't exactly lacking in the looks or charm department. If he was being picky, it wasn't hard to imagine he'd still have his pick of the dating pool. Ryan watched her in silence for a few seconds. Then, almost absent-mindedly, he tapped his finger against the edge of the table and said, "Not quite." Claire raised an eyebrow, unsure what that meant, until he dropped the bomb. I want to marry you. The water she had just taken a sip of nearly sprayed everywhere. Claire choked mid-swallow, coughing as her eyes widened in disbelief. Ryan simply smiled, unfazed, and offered her a napkin like he'd just commented on the weather. His tone was relaxed. Too relaxed for someone who just casually proposed marriage. You want to marry me? She croaked, still trying to process. He shrugged, cool as ever, sliding the napkin closer to her. Let's not make this dramatic. I'm talking about a fake marriage. Get the paperwork, skip the awkward setups, and move on with our lives. Saves us both time and a lot of headaches. Don't you think? Claire stared at him. He was serious. He didn't look like he was joking. Not even close. Her initial reaction was to reject the idea outright. It was insane. But the longer she looked at him, the more the thought started to worm its way into her brain. No more awkward dates. No more weekly lectures from her mom. And the husband in question? Ryan Carter. Mr. Reliable. Mr. Handsome. Mr. Calm as hell. She glanced him up and down, evaluating. He just smiled and tilted his head like he was waiting for her to catch up. It was tempting, but thankfully a little bit of logic remained. "Why me?" she finally asked, narrowing her eyes. He leaned in slightly, resting his elbow on the table. "Why not you?" Claire gave him a look. He gave a half smirk. "If you really want a reason, we know each other, we get along fine, and I don't hate looking at you. That enough." Claire couldn't deny it. Ryan's logic was starting to make sense. She'd already wasted so much time trying to meet the right guy, and year after year, no one had clicked. Maybe she wasn't even capable of falling for someone new anymore. So a fake marriage with Ryan? Honestly, it didn't sound like the worst idea. This might be her one real chance to stop the endless cycle of disappointing dates and meddling family pressure. So she said yes. The wedding was a formality. No bells, no flowers, no fairy lights. Just paperwork. The plan was simple. Register the marriage, show their families they were settled, and keep living their lives. But her mom had other plans. Turns out, his parents weren't on board with the hush-hush strategy either. So with no way around it, they held a small reception. And that's when everything changed. One too many drinks. One honest conversation too many. And somewhere between the champagne and the soft lighting, a fake couple became a real one, at least for one night. Worse, Claire got pregnant. Just 2.5 months later, the consequences were staring them in the face, in the form of a little pink plus sign. Ryan looked down at the pregnancy test sitting on the table, then up at her. His voice was soft but steady. "If you want to keep it, I'm in." Claire didn't answer right away. Her hand drifted to her stomach. They sat across from each other at the dining table. The test rested between them, like some fragile truth they weren't ready to touch. The last time she'd felt this awkward with him was the day they reconnected. On that accidental blind date a month ago. Ryan was watching her again. There was something different in his eyes now. A flicker of nerves, maybe. He wasn't the same smooth-talking, popular guy from high school. 10 years had turned him into someone quieter, calmer, better. And the truth was, Claire had always loved kids. The idea of walking away from this life growing inside her? She couldn't bring herself to do it. After a long pause, she spoke. "This baby is ours whether we're in love or not. So we have to give them a good life. A safe, happy home." She said it seriously, maybe even a little sternly. Ryan used to be a bit of a flirt. She had to lay some ground rules. But instead of reacting defensively, he just laughed. A deep, real laugh that caught her off guard. "Jesus, Claire," he said, still smiling. "You talk like you're writing a parenting handbook. I'm 29 now. I'm too old to be a playboy." The way he said it hit a little too close to home, and Claire blushed, brushing past him to pour a glass of water. She needed a second to breathe. Just as she lifted the glass to her lips, Ryan appeared beside her, gently taking it from her hand. He filled it halfway with warm water, touched the outside to check the temperature, and handed it back. "It's December," he said. "Cold water's not great for your stomach." Claire blinked. That was thoughtful. And maybe that's what scared her the most. She tried to keep things casual. "You don't have to stick around, you know. We're still technically fake married. It might get messy later." Ryan raised a brow. "Kinda too late now, don't you think? Have you told your mom yet?" he asked, studying her face. Claire hesitated. "No," she admitted. "Tomorrow. In person. It's not a phone call kind of thing." She suddenly realized how close they were standing and took a step sideways, setting her glass down. Ryan nodded. "All right. We'll talk to her together." Before she could respond, he followed her again. Claire stopped, finally spinning around. What are you doing? Ryan blinked, looking innocent. Just checking out the place. First time at your house. After they got married, they decided to live separately. He really had never been here. So should I move in? He asked. Or would you rather come stay at my place? He was still talking as he trailed her around the living room. We should probably get a nanny. Good for the baby's development. Also, I heard kids grow up happier when their parents get along, so we should definitely live together. And hey, I doubt the baby's gonna be ugly. Though if they are, that's gonna be embarrassing when we go out. Not that I care, I mean okay, maybe I care a little. Claire stopped walking. Ryan kept going. And I'm not saying I don't feel parental responsibility. I just think it's important not to sugarcoat things. You know? Lying to kids is, honestly, a little unethical if you ask me. And Claire? Why are you so quiet? What do you think? Claire took a long deep breath. I think you need to shut up. Her baby could never be anything but beautiful. Even though she was already pregnant and didn't need the money, Claire still went to the job interview. The company had a policy. Miss your appointment and you'd land on their blacklist. With no time to spare, she decided to just show up and go through the motions. Her life philosophy was to always leave things on good terms, just in case paths crossed again. That's how she'd handled her high school crush too, the one on her 11th grade English teacher. She'd carried that quiet admiration for 6 years. Now that she was married to Ryan, well, that quiet story had officially ended. The interview wrapped around 11. On her way out of the building, she spotted a modern little bistro nearby and stepped in to grab a quick bite. As she waited for her order, a voice called her name almost cautiously. Claire Bennett. She looked up and immediately recognized the face. Even after all these years, she knew him instantly. Daniel Rivers. The guy who used to sit behind her in high school. Claire? It's really you. He grinned, cheerful and warm, just like he'd always been. He gestured to the seat across from her. Anyone sitting here? She gave a polite, if slightly awkward, smile. Go ahead. Thanks. Daniel pulled out the chair and Saturday. You working around here? Not really, just passing through. She stirred her water absently. Didn't expect to run into anyone I knew. Daniel looked her over, not in a weird way, more like someone surprised and a little nostalgic. You look the same. Hair's longer though. He held up his fingers to demonstrate. Back in high school, Claire used to tie her hair into a low ponytail every day. Daniel, who always slouched at his desk behind her, had a habit of napping with his head on the table. Every time she leaned back, her ponytail would brush against his face and wake him. But he never moved or complained. Instead, he'd stay lying there and twist her ponytail into goofy braids. When she turned around, he'd just smirk at her like he'd won something. You still single? Daniel asked out of nowhere. Claire blinked, caught off guard. I what? I mean, he clarified quickly. I just heard you hadn't really dated in years. Before she could reply, the waiter brought her food. She was starving, so she took a bite first. Go on, she said, gesturing with her fork. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. It's nothing. Just something that popped out. Where do you work now? She asked, changing the subject. Maybe we'll run into each other again. Daniel had come from a modest background, just like her. But judging from the sharp tailoring and expensive watch, things had changed for him. He'd always been a top student, while she'd floated somewhere in the middle. And now she was, well, unemployed. I'm between jobs, she said with a shrug. Daniel gave her a sympathetic smile. Actually, we're hiring. If you're looking for something, you should come by. The company treats people well. And guess who else works there? Claire raised an eyebrow mid-chew. Who? Remember Tammy from our class? Oh no, speak of the devil, he said suddenly, pointing behind her. Claire swallowed and turned around. Sure enough, Tammy Hale had just walked through the door, glowing, stylish, and radiant just like always. and right behind her was Ryan. Claire's heart sank. Tammy. Ryan's ex Claire had thought they broke up long ago. She never imagined they were still in touch, let alone having lunch together and laughing like nothing had changed. So then why had he come back to her? Married her? Got her pregnant? Claire quickly turned back to her plate and forced another bite of spaghetti. Regret clawed up her throat. Maybe marrying Ryan, even as a fake, had been a huge mistake. Tammy spotted Daniel and walked over, her heels clicking against the tile. Claire? She said, tilting her head, confused for a beat before her eyes lit up. Wow, it's really you. Claire inhaled sharply and turned, schooling her face into something neutral. Yeah, it's been a while. Tammy smiled with a look that was far too pleased with itself. She grabbed Ryan's arm and said with a wink, "Old classmates running into each other like this? Looks like we've got two pairs now. Perfect for a double date." Ryan glanced at her, then over at Daniel sitting across the table. Eventually, he let out a low laugh. "I'm good either way. Up to you guys." Claire forced a smile. This was too much, too messy, too awkward. "I've got to run," she said quickly. "Finished eating, and I have somewhere to be. Rain check." She grabbed her bag and stood up. Just as she turned, Daniel suddenly reached out and caught her wrist. Claire froze, then instinctively pulled her hand back. Realizing his mistake, Daniel scratched his head, embarrassed. "Sorry, you had something on your face." He pulled out a napkin and offered it to her. Claire took it and wiped her cheek where he'd pointed. Sure enough, a bit of sauce. She dabbed at it a few more times. "Thanks," she said. "That would have been embarrassing." Daniel smiled. "No big deal. Back in high school, you used to let me know when I'd fall asleep in class and end up with ink all over my face." Before Claire could say anything, she caught the sound of Ryan's laugh, a short, quiet one. She wasn't even sure if she'd heard it right, but her head turned toward him instinctively. He didn't say anything, just gave her a look, a small curve of the lips, unreadable eyes. They were technically married now. That thought made her uneasy, like she'd just been caught doing something she shouldn't, even if it wasn't anything at all. And then there was Tammy, right next to him. Claire straightened her shoulders. He had no right to act smug. He was the one having lunch with his ex. They didn't know each other anything. Not really. No feelings, no commitment. It was just a deal. A practical decision. And if they kept forcing themselves into some fake domestic act, it would only backfire. In the end, they might even lose the thin layer of friendship they had left. And even if there was a child, she could raise it on her own. She knew plenty of single moms living just fine, working, thriving, happy. She had money, time, and soon, a kid who'd probably look a little like her. Life wouldn't be so bad. Resolved, she turned to Daniel with a smile. "Let's keep in touch. I'll head out first." Tammy's voice came in, tinged with disappointment. "Ah, we just all ran into each other, and now you're leaving?" Then with a bright smile she tugged Ryan's sleeve. "Next time, you and Ryan should join us for dinner. Make it a double date." Claire nodded politely, brushing it off. "Sure, we'll see. If everyone's happy, that's what matters." But there wouldn't be a next time. She wasn't signing up for some twisted group outing. This wasn't a sitcom. On her way out, Claire didn't bother waiting for Ryan. If he wanted to catch up with an ex, so be it. She doubted he'd be in a hurry to come home. But when she walked through the front door, her mom was already waiting, standing there with the door wide open, peeking behind her. "Where's Ryan?" she asked immediately. "Didn't you say he was coming with you? What happened?" Claire raised her hands. "He's not coming," her mom muttered under her breath, clearly annoyed. "Mom, can we talk?" Claire said, moving toward the couch. Her serious tone made her mother raise an eyebrow. "What is it now?" Claire sat down, exhaled, and said, "I want a divorce." "What?" Her mom hadn't even made it to the couch yet. She froze in place, eyes wide. What do you mean divorce? She asked, her voice rising. You two just got married. The ink on the certificate hasn't even dried yet. Claire reached out and gently patted her mom's hand. That's exactly the point. If we wait until the paper's warm, it might be too late. It's only been a month, Mom. That's long enough to know if something doesn't feel right. Her mother went quiet for a moment, then cautiously asked, So is he not good to you? Claire sighed. No, that's the problem. He's too good. Right after saying she wanted a divorce, Claire didn't dare bring up the pregnancy to her mom. So flustered, she just nodded. Her mom clicked her tongue. I mean, really, who could have seen this coming? I told you, didn't I? Rushing into marriage is never a good idea. But no, you just had to go through with it, wouldn't listen to a word I said. And now look. Barely married and already talking about divorce. She paced in front of Claire, her hands wringing together, clapping one into the other with every turn. Then, as if something suddenly occurred to her, she leaned in, her expression sharp. Have you even told Ryan yet? Or are you planning to talk to your mother-in-law first? She groaned dramatically. Not married, I have to help you get married. Married, now I have to help you get divorced. All day long it's nothing but stress from you. Claire's mouth twitched. Okay, yeah, maybe this had been a heat-of-the-moment decision. And yeah, it was starting to feel a little impulsive. I'll handle it, Mom. You don't have to worry, she said, trying to be firm. I didn't sleep well last night. I'm going to rest for a bit. She made it halfway to her room before doubling back and calling out. And don't say anything to Ryan yet. In her room, she collapsed flat on the bed in a giant X, staring up at the ceiling, lost in thought. Her gaze drifted to the bookshelf beside her desk where a stack of old high school books still sat, books she hadn't been able to throw out. When she got married, her mom had tried to gather them all up and sell them off, but Claire had quietly rescued a few. Now, without thinking, she grabbed the one on top, her worst subject, chemistry. Sometimes you just had to believe in fate. She rolled over and laughed quietly to herself, flipping open the cover. There it was, 3 letters staring back at her. 17 CLCL. She'd hated chemistry, but she'd always loved the element with atomic number 17. Her fingers traced the neatly written characters. It was ridiculous. Sitting up, she grabbed the entire pile of books from the shelf and began flipping through them one by one. Every single one, without exception, had a big number 17 scribbled on the first inside page. Everyone thought it was her student ID number. Only Claire knew the truth. It wasn't an ID. It was a secret, a code name for the boy she liked. She'd never told anyone, but she'd given him a name, 17. That number was her own little secret, the symbol of her quiet teenage crush, the one that had shadowed her through all of high school. She'd met 17 on a simple autumn afternoon. It was the end of fall, quiet, golden, peaceful. She had plans to hang out with a friend, wore her brand new pink cardigan, and was just about to leave when her mom tossed her a creamy white knit hat. She waited at their meeting spot for ages, but her friend canceled last minute. With nothing better to do, she wandered the neighborhood. It was the weekend and the streets were crowded. She eventually plopped down on the edge of a stone planter beside a silly penguin statue. Out of boredom, she took off her hat and gently placed it on the penguin's head, pulling out her phone to snap a picture. And just as she tapped the screen, someone stepped into the frame behind the penguin. Startled, she looked up. Blue sky, white clouds, orange leaves drifting down. Everything blurred into the background, except for him. All she could see was the boy standing there. He was beautiful. Fair skin, jet black eyes that sparkled, soft hair falling slightly over his forehead. And when his gaze met hers, he actually paused, stunned, then smiled. Soft, kind, just a little crooked. I like your hat, he said, nodding toward the penguin. She laughed. Thanks. She quickly reached over and pulled the hat down, clutching it in her hands. Maybe it was the new sweater. Maybe it was the cool air. But in that moment, everything felt warm and itchy and tingly, like the start of something unexpected. Something soft. Something teenage. Something real. Something that bloomed before she even realized it. Claire couldn't help but think how naive she'd been. Had she really fallen for a complete stranger? In a world of millions, the only thread connecting her and that boy was a single blurry photo. Maybe she'd been trying to tell herself all along. A girl's first crush is always vague, dreamlike, nothing to take seriously. He didn't have to see it as real. Time went on day by day and she thought she'd moved on. Forgotten. But then spring semester came around, and the moment she saw him walk into her classroom, the memory of that autumn afternoon came rushing back. It was the second half of junior year. No one expected a transfer student that late into the school year. Claire remembered thinking then that maybe, just maybe, fate really was a thing. He had a beautiful name. Too bad he didn't remember her. To him, she was just another unfamiliar face in the crowd. They were never really friends, barely even acquaintances. Claire wasn't outgoing, and her social circle was small. They never spoke beyond a casual hi, never shared a real moment. She sat 2 rows over, occasionally stealing glances when she thought he wouldn't notice. At some point, she started secretly calling him a name only she knew. 17 chlorine. There was a reason. His name, when reversed, sounded a lot like 17. She even started writing it that way in her notebooks, exaggerating the L in the element symbol Cl. Coincidentally, Cl had 12 strokes in total, just like the number of strokes in his full name. And most importantly, 17 had been her student ID number. So, 17 became the secret connection she'd created between them. Some people say love at first sight is nothing more than being captivated by someone's looks. Maybe that was true. At first, she'd only felt a flutter and admiration, because he looked like someone pulled straight out of a teenage daydream. But her feelings didn't stay light and fleeting. They grew. Day after day, she began to like him more and more. Not just because of his looks, or his grades, but because he was kind, genuinely kind, even to people he didn't know. Like her. There was this one time in the cafeteria. It was self-serve and Claire had just grabbed her tray, only to realize her meal card was missing. She patted every pocket, dug through her bag. Nothing. She froze, unsure of what to do. Her friend had gone to the restroom and wasn't back yet, and she didn't know anyone else nearby she could borrow a card from. Then, like it was scripted, 17 appeared. Just like that day behind the penguin statue, he showed up out of nowhere, calm, bright, effortless. He took one look at her, didn't say much, just smiled and swiped his own card for her meal. She remembered it clearly. He ordered beef noodle salad, extra cilantro, no onions. Then he scooped some greens onto his plate, mixing them in. And just as he turned to leave, he spotted her again. "Oh hey Claire Bennett? Why are you following me?" he teased, laughing a little. He was taller than her, and when he leaned down to speak, those deep, twinkling eyes looked straight into hers. That was the first time he'd said her name out loud. Her face probably turned bright red. "Thanks," she mumbled. "I'll pay you back." Claire had smiled and said it was nothing, that classmates should help each other out. He grinned easily. "Then next time you can pay me back." It was the first time she'd ever been so insistent about something. She looked at him and repeated, quietly but clearly, "I'll pay you back." Because even just exchanging a few meaningless words with him was more than enough. "All right then," he said with a shrug. "Next time you owe me lunch, Claire." He didn't seem to think much of it, just laughed and added, "Actually here, have this too." He held out a tangerine. "I think you'll like it." Without thinking, she took it, dazed, just as someone in the distance shouted his name. It drowned out the thank you she reflexively murmured. He turned to answer the call, tossed her a final smile and jogged off. All she could see was the wind catching the edge of his school jacket as he disappeared. The tangerine in her hand gave off a soft, sweet scent, and somehow it wrapped itself around her heart. Yes, she liked tangerines. The school cafeteria always offered two kinds of fruit, tangerines and bananas, the most common. She always picked the tangerine. That day had been no exception. So when he handed one to her, she thought maybe he had noticed. But the truth was that day the only fruit they had was tangerines. He didn't have any other choice. And that was the moment she realized, without options, a tangerine isn't a gesture. It's just the default. She never did eat that lunch. Never paid him back. Because not long after, it seemed like he was in love with her. Kamihale. The prettiest girl in class. Smart. Effortless. Perfect. Maybe to him that next time was just something people said. Not something meant to be remembered. He never brought it up again. 2 weeks later, Claire finally worked up the nerve to return the favor. She planned it out, timed it just right. It was a Friday, and even though she'd made up her mind and prepped herself all day, she still hesitated until the final period ended. After school was best. She always packed up slowly, checking and rechecking her bag so she'd be one of the last to leave. But 17? He always left even later. If she timed it just right, she could walk past his desk on her way to the back door. That way it would feel natural. He'd always look up and say, "See ya," like it was nothing. Because to him it was. He said goodbye to everyone. But to her those words meant something. Enough to make her heart skip. She always smiled back. Just a simple bye. But it was hers. Tonight, if they were the last two in the room, she could finally bring it up. That meal she still owed him. But just when she thought the moment had come, Tammy appeared. The class favorite. Beautiful, flawless, and apparently in a hurry. She stormed into the room, frowning like she owned the place, and smacked 17 on the back. "Hey, what's taking you so long? We're gonna be late." He didn't look annoyed. Instead, he just ruffled her hair with that playful grin of his. "Relax, princess. I'll get you there on time. Let's go, let's go. Stop nagging." She pouted and huffed. Claire didn't watch anymore. She dropped her gaze and slipped out the door, the words she'd rehearsed all day dissolving on her tongue. She could still hear their laughter and voices faintly echoing behind her. That day, she didn't get the chance to repay his kindness, nor did she get to hear his usual goodbye. But none of it mattered anymore. His goodbye and hers had finally become something different. She sped up, no longer bothering to leave through the back door. He had someone else now, someone he truly wanted to say goodbye to. And if that was the case, then her feelings no longer had a place. After that, when the classroom was empty and no one was watching, she would sometimes glance toward his desk. And in every notebook, every old textbook, she began to write the number 17 over and over. Yes, she admitted it to herself, she still liked him. But after that day, those feelings were hers alone. 17 had become the vessel for her one-sided affection. A secret name only she knew. The boy who sat behind her back then was cheerful and kind. His name even sounded like 17. He liked her. She knew. He had confessed to her once, and she gently turned him down, not wanting to hurt him. Sometimes she wondered, if he had been 17, wouldn't things have been easier? Then they both could have been happy. But feelings don't follow logic. And the boy she liked was named Ryan West. Or as she'd always called him, 17. Maybe she never should have given him that name, one that carried so much weight. Because from the very start, her feelings and his were always going in opposite directions. The last time she ever saw Ryan was after college entrance exams, when she came back to school to pick up her diploma. The school had assigned time slots for graduation pickup, and by pure chance they crossed paths at the staircase. She was coming up. He was coming down. One looked up, the other down. They stood there face to face on different steps of the same stairway. The summer cicadas droned on in the background, but she could barely hear them over the pounding of her heart. She told herself, just this once. He looked down at her but didn't look away. Then someone called his name, Tammy. Snapped her out of it. She blinked, stepped to the side to give him space, bowed her head. He passed by her. The breeze rushed by, and as he walked past, she heard him say softly, "Goodbye, Claire." She froze. By the time she recovered, he was already a few steps down. The breeze blew through his hair, revealing his profile, still as beautiful as ever. She lowered her gaze and whispered, "Goodbye." This time it was a real goodbye. A goodbye that meant never seeing each other again. And that's exactly what happened. Years went by. She never saw him again. 17 faded into a quiet secret, buried deep within time. Seeing him again at that blind date was the last thing she'd expected. And when he suggested marriage, not just dating, not just pretending, she hadn't just been shocked. She'd been shaken. Maybe the things we never got in our youth really do become obsessions. 10 years later, she still liked Ryan. So in a moment of weakness, she agreed to his proposal. Time had flown like the wind. And now, having flipped through the last of her books, Claire thought maybe it was finally time to let go. Ryan was still everything she remembered. But the truth was he'd never really belonged to her. Not then and not now. One by one, she carefully put the books away. It was time to close the book on 17. But as she placed the last one back on the shelf, her elbow bumped the corner of the desk. A book slipped and hit the floor. It was the chemistry book. She picked it up, dusted it off, gave it a little shake, and something slipped out. A folded piece of craft paper. A letter. There was no writing on the outside, nothing to hint at what it was. She turned it over and over, frowning, trying to remember. Nothing. Finally, she opened it. The first few words stunned her. The handwriting, she recognized it instantly. She had tried to copy it so many times back then, but never quite managed to capture its essence. She looked closer. The top line had something written, then messily crossed out. She squinted, trying to make it out. Beneath the scribbles, she could just barely see the word, "Dear." Then came 3 clear, uncrossed words. Claire Bennett. Her heart pounded in her ears. Heat flooded her cheeks, her chest, her whole body. She blinked, trying to steady herself, trying to breathe. Then carefully, word by word, she read what came next. Claire. Some say that when you're still young and uncertain, you shouldn't speak so easily of love. But after thinking it through, I still wanted to write this letter. It's just a shame that I sat here, holding the pen for so long, and still didn't know what to say. I never realized how limited my words could be. Surprising, isn't it? Someone like me, when it comes to liking someone, becomes a complete coward. I've come to believe that life is short, and we meet so many people along the way. But for some people, it only means something if we say it out loud. So please forgive me for being selfish. I didn't ask your permission to do this. But here it is. July 20th, 6 p.m., the Fountain at City Square. If you don't show up, I won't leave. Of course, you don't have to feel any pressure. I know you probably already like someone. The way I like you. Maybe it's him. Why else would you secretly write the number 17 so many times? To be honest, I'm a little jealous. Especially since, if you read my name backwards, it could almost be 17. Too bad love doesn't come with clarity. But it's okay. I just wanted to tell you. No matter what happens, if you smile, I'll be happy. So please remember me. And I'll tell you my name. Think of it as a goodbye. Claire stared at the letter, frozen. She couldn't move. In her hand was a piece of paper that felt impossibly heavy, like it held the weight of years, and a truth she was never meant to know. She laughed, and then cried, because it hadn't been her secret alone. Back then, both of them had been cowards. And how could she not regret it? How could she not wish she could turn back time? So many years late. She'd tried to let it go, had convinced herself it wasn't meant to be. But fate had missed its timing, made its mistake. Back then she hadn't seen the letter, hadn't heard his name, hadn't had the chance to say, "I like you too," clearly, truly, out loud. So Ryan West had once liked her. That's amazing. Fountain at City Square. If you don't show, I won't leave. Suddenly, Claire wanted nothing more than to show up to a date that had expired 10 years ago. July 20th. She remembered it clearly. That very night, she had received a confession from Daniel Rivers. She hadn't had many close friends back then. High school had been stressful, sometimes overwhelming. And Daniel was the kind of person who always brought a little light into her day. Sunny, easygoing, always knew how to make her laugh. She had only ever seen him as a friend. Her heart had belonged to someone else, Ryan. So when she saw Daniel's message, her first reaction wasn't joy, it was panic. Not excitement that someone liked her. Just fear of hurting someone she cared about. She'd chosen her words carefully, gently turning him down. And Daniel, being Daniel, had brushed it off with his usual smile, pretending nothing had happened. Still, every time she saw him after that, something inside her squirmed, awkward and unsure. The boy she liked didn't like her. The boy who liked her she didn't like. So what was fate really? She'd asked herself that question more times than she could count, never finding an answer. She still remembered. The rain that day had poured like crazy. She'd caught a cold and stayed home, curled up under the covers. But what about Ryan? Had he actually waited for her? That question echoed louder now than it ever had. Claire pulled on a windbreaker, a soft pale pink, the same color she used to love back in high school. It felt like the only way to go back, by returning to the past, wrapped in what she used to be. Maybe that's how you make peace with what's been lost. It was Saturday, 7 p.m. City Square was packed. The fountain sat at the very center, ringed with crowds. People tossed coins in, whispering silent wishes. Claire had done it once too, just going along with everyone else. She couldn't even remember what she'd wished for. And even if it had worked, she probably wouldn't have believed it. 'Cause back then she hadn't meant it. She didn't believe in things like that. She wandered slowly around the plaza before finding herself back at the fountain. The water wasn't spraying high, just gently misting. Droplets sparkled under the colorful lights. The silver coins at the bottom shimmered like stars underwater. Each one a wish from someone who had once stood here, hoping. Claire thought for a moment, then walked to a nearby convenience store and exchanged a few bills for coins. She came back, closed her eyes, and clasped her hands together. I hope every feeling of love is treated with kindness. That every regret eventually fades. That every coward finds the courage to love and be loved. One by one she tossed in the coins. She opened her eyes and saw Ryan. He was standing on the other side of the fountain, dressed simply in a black athletic jacket, standing just off-center in the glow of the lights, separated from her only by the gentle spray of water. They stared at each other. Neither moved. Then slowly Ryan stepped forward. One step, then another. He stopped just a breath away from her. His gaze locked onto hers. Then finally he spoke. "Claire, are you serious about this?" His voice was thick, like it had traveled through fog. Heavy, uncertain. "Would you really only stay because of the baby?" Claire frowned slightly. So her mom had told him. Was this fate? Coincidence? Or just life playing games again? She sighed, but before she could answer, Ryan stepped forward, one more step, and pulled her into his arms. She could hear his heartbeat. Strong, uneven. "Don't go through with the divorce. Please." His voice cracked. "After all these years, why is it still him that you see? What does he have that I don't? I'm taller, smarter, better looking. I had better grades. I worked harder. So why? Why isn't it me? Back in high school, Ryan had always been fiercely competitive, especially with Daniel. They were nearly the same height, always lined up next to each other in gym class. Even when running the 50-meter dash, they'd challenge each other. Who tripped first in the cafeteria? Who dropped their tray with less grace? Everything became a competition. Claire had never understood why Ryan treated Daniel so differently than everyone else. But now she knew. He had liked her. And he'd thought she liked Daniel. He was jealous. Claire couldn't help it, her lips twitched. She stifled a laugh, bit back a grin, and looked up at him with playful frustration. "You talk like love is some math equation," she interrupted gently. "But love doesn't come with clear answers." Ryan blinked, stunned. He slowly loosened his arms, then let her go completely. His expression dimmed. He turned away. "I get it," he said quietly. "If that's what you want, I'll let you go." Watching Ryan's disappointed back as he turned away, Claire suddenly didn't want to tease him anymore. Before she could think twice, she wrapped her arms around him from behind. Ryan froze. Whatever he was about to say stopped halfway, stuck on his lips. He tilted his head slightly, eyes wide, blinking at her in shock, the corners of his eyes faintly red. Claire smiled, soft and certain, her eyes locked on his. His face showed nothing but confusion. Wet eyes, expression dazed, almost adorably lost. "Claire, why are you hugging me?" "You're the one who said it wasn't clear," she whispered. "And if I do this, you might really regret walking away." He stared at her, silent. "I'll count to 3, he said, voice hoarse. "If you don't let go by then, just know there's no turning back." 3, 1. Before the final word could fully leave his mouth, Claire rose on her toes and pressed a kiss to his cheek. "I like you," she said. Ryan blinked. His eyes glazed, his hand slowly lifting to touch the spot where her lips had just been. What did you say?" Claire looked up at him, steady, and repeated, carefully, clearly. "Did you know the boy I liked had these eyes, dark and bright at the same time? I fell for him the moment I saw him. He sat 3 seats away from me. I used to lean sideways on my desk just to sneak glances at him. His name? It was beautiful. But I was too shy. So I gave him a nickname, 17. She smiled, her eyes glinting. "Everyone thought it was my student number. But it wasn't. Read backward, it was his name. Yours. I liked you, Ryan. For 10 years. And that's why I agreed to marry you, even if you never really liked me back." Something broke in Ryan's expression. He finally snapped out of his daze, wiping away a tear without even realizing it. Then he pointed to himself, voice cracking. "You mean that damn name 17 was me? Not Daniel." "I really do like you, Ryan," she whispered. "How many times do I have to say it for you to believe me?" He stared at her, completely overwhelmed. Claire gave a helpless smile and nodded. "You know, someone once said, if you smile, I'll be happy. But guess what? I ended up turning away to cry when no one was looking. That's not romantic. That's just pathetic." Whoever said it definitely didn't think it through. Ryan huffed a laugh. "You better be careful how you quote people." He couldn't help but grin, pinching her cheek with a raised brow. "Don't go twisting things. I didn't cry. And I'm not the one who wanted a divorce." Claire swatted his hand away with mock irritation. "Yeah, well, it wasn't a real marriage, remember? So technically it's a fake divorce. You, sir, are a fraud." Fine, he laughed. "Let me think for a sec. What was it again?" He tapped his chin playfully. "Oh, I remember now. It went like this. If you smile, then I'll be happy." He grinned like an idiot. Was the author named Ryan West by any chance? Claire rolled her eyes. "Wow, modest." He shrugged with a wink. "Hey, I may not be the original, but I'm definitely the upgrade. One more thing, if you're smiling and you're standing next to me, then yeah, I'll be the happiest guy in the world." Ugh. Narcissist. Guilty as charged, he said, pretending to puff up. But you're narcissist. Claire couldn't help herself. She punched Ryan in the chest. See? I knew it. You really are a fraud. Ryan rubbed his chest with a small wince, but his eyes softened as they landed on her face. There was something in his gaze, tender, complicated, raw. He stayed silent for a few seconds, then leaned in, wrapping his arms around her neck. His voice was quiet, but the weight behind it was undeniable. I'm not a fraud, he said. I meant every word. Claire, I'll never force you to do anything. Liking you, that's my choice. How you choose, that's yours. Even if your choice isn't me, I'd still be hurting, yeah, but I'd smile through it and wish you well anyway. He paused. I'll admit, that blind date wasn't exactly an accident. But the baby, yeah, that part was. I'm sorry. If you want to keep it, I'll be a good dad. I'll raise the baby right. If you don't, I won't blame you. But none of that's what really matters right now. What matters is, he let out a shaky breath, I just heard you say you like me. And honestly, I'm scared. Scared I'll wake up tomorrow and realize this was all just a dream. Claire blinked, her heart aching in a way that felt both sharp and sweet, like sugar dissolving in hot tea, leaving a bitter aftertaste. Even if it's a dream, she said, voice soft, it's a beautiful one. I'm sorry I came too late. 10 whole years late to read your letter. Ryan shook his head slowly. No. It's not too late. Not even a little. At least you didn't know. Not that you didn't care. I'm pretty easy to please, he added with a crooked smile. But there's one thing I do regret. Suddenly, Ryan lifted his head, face twisting with mock agony. If I'd known you were this discreet, I would have just said it out loud. Why'd I even bother writing that stupid letter? I didn't even know where to put the damn thing. Do you remember after the final exams? When I walked past your desk and accidentally knocked over that stack of books you'd arranged so neatly? How could she forget? Everyone had been excited after finishing the last test. She was too excited but also unbearably sad. Because starting the next day, she'd never again be able to turn around in class and see him there. He'd become nothing more than a memory, just a face her mind would replay in the quiet moments. She'd lined up her books with care that day, every single one of them marked with the number 17. And then Ryan had come out of nowhere and bumped the side of her desk. The books tumbled. A few of the top ones smacked into his chest and dropped to the floor. He'd winced, clutching his side. And her heart clenched. Oh my God, are you okay? She'd asked, rushing to help him up. She remembered everything. Ryan stood up, brushing the dust off his clothes with a sheepish grin. I'm fine. Sorry, I didn't mean to bump into you. Let me help you pick these up. Before Claire could even protest, he had crouched down beside the pile. It had been a hot day, yet he'd worn a jacket over a short-sleeved shirt. The hem of it trailed along the floor as he moved, and she couldn't quite see what he was doing, but it sounded like he was quietly wiping off each book one by one. When he was done, he stacked them neatly on her desk. I cleaned them. Double-checked just in case. Then he left. Fast. Too fast. Looking back now, that was the moment he'd slipped the letter in. She hadn't noticed then. Hadn't given his words much thought. All she remembered was how quickly he ran, disappearing like a blink, like it was all just an awkward blip in a happy day. For him, maybe it was just a momentary stumble. A quick fall, a few books, a sting of embarrassment. She, on the other hand, had gone home hugging that stack of books to her chest. She had shoved them to the deepest part of her bookshelf and never opened them again. I told you, sometimes guys bump into girls on purpose, Ryan said now, half laughing, half groaning. Trying to find a way to talk to them, maybe get a free apology or something. I was sweating like crazy. My palms were soaked. I was terrified you'd open the book right away, and I'd just stand there like an idiot with no words left. I ran like hell. And now? Now I hate myself for not just telling you outright. He let out a dramatic sigh. You owe me for that, you know. Claire blinked, coming out of her memory fog. Owe you? For what? For only ever liking me, he said. For liking only me forever. The mist from the fountain shimmered in the air, catching the lights above as they floated between them. Ryan stood there smiling. His eyes lit up with something bright and beautiful, and in them she saw her reflection. She heard her heart pounding and saw clear as day the boy she had first fallen for all those years ago. That same boy was still smiling. And just like back then, she fell for those eyes all over again. In front of the crowd, Ryan kissed her. No warning.
No hesitaste.
Just leaned in and kissed her. She heard someone in the crowd gasp. Felt the flush rise to her face. Her hands itched to crawl into a hole somewhere. But Ryan, he was no coward anymore. Not even a little. Claire didn't dare look around. She just smacked him lightly on the arm, face burning. Eventually he pulled away. His lips were still red, still damp. She could guess hers looked the same. Covering her mouth, she glared at him, flustered. Ryan just chuckled, his own face tinged with pink. He gently pulled her head against his chest. No one knows who you are anyway. Only my face is out there. If anyone's gonna stare, let them. I want people to know I'm taken. Her heart twisted, part sweet, part aching. You know, she muttered. I never realized you were this shameless. He shrugged. Totally my fault. If I'd known how reserved you were, I would have dropped the pride ages ago. Held on to you tighter. Forget dignity. How else was I gonna get a wife? He sighed dramatically. Sitting next to you every day, watching you flirt with that playboy, it was torture. Watching our sweet little cabbage growing in someone else's garden. Claire looked up, unimpressed. Excuse me? Cabbage? Watch your mouth. We were just classmates. Daniel was nothing more than a friend. Don't insult him like that. Ryan scoffed, unconvinced. I'm not jealous of him. He's got nothing on me. You hear me? I'm your husband, not that guy. Claire burst out laughing. If you want to brag about yourself, fine. But why drag him down with you? Ryan let go of her, resting his hands on her shoulders, brow arched with a smirk. Hey, don't make me the bad guy. I'm just stating facts. That guy? He's absolutely a flirt. Don't even think about him again. Just wipe him from your mind. Claire narrowed her eyes. Wait, you mean he's seeing someone? Ryan clicked his tongue. Yeah, my aunt. That's right. My aunt. Claire blinked. Aunt? Your aunt. She repeated it under her breath like she couldn't believe it. That was quite the age gap. Geez, you sound like you've been choking on jealousy for years, she muttered. Ryan didn't like her expression at all. He grabbed her cheeks and squished them between his hands. Hey, don't believe me? Here, see for yourself. He pulled out his phone with a very serious expression. As Ryan spoke, he pulled out his phone, tapped a few times and handed it to Claire. She took it with a puzzled look only to see, clear as day, a photo of Daniel Rivers with a woman. Not just any woman. Claire pointed at the woman beside him, eyes narrowing. Her? That's. Ryan nodded without a hint of hesitation. Yup. That's my aunt. Claire swallowed hard. Seriously? That was his aunt? Ryan, deadpan as ever, added. Actually, she's your aunt now too. So stop calling her his aunt. It's our aunt from now on. Claire groaned, finally accepting the truth. All that jealousy she'd quietly bottled up for so long for nothing. She had seriously eaten a ridiculous amount of imaginary vinegar over this. Who would have guessed that Tammy, flawless, shiny, perfect Tammy, was actually his aunt? She'd thought it was a joke. The way they acted together didn't feel like family at all. Seeing her look so defeated, Ryan dramatically shook his head and sighed. You know, I tried to tell you before, but you just never caught on. I'm wounded, wife. Emotionally scarred. You better make it up to me. Claire ignored his whining. Her curiosity was getting the better of her. Wait, but seriously, she asked, fully serious now. Tammy hated Daniel in school. Like hated him. How the hell did that happen? Ryan rolled his eyes. Focus, woman. Stop worrying about them. The man standing right in front of you is the one you should care about. Your loving, devastated husband. Claire gave a small, snorty huff. Ryan casually pocketed his phone and reached down to grab her hand. Interlacing their fingers, he led her forward. Claire grumbled but didn't pull away. I'm not overthinking. I'm just saying she's our aunt now. Like shared family member. Well, not anymore, Ryan said casually. Anyway, aren't you curious how it all happened? I am curious. Tell me, were you the one who set them up? Claire asked, eyes sparkling with gossip energy. Come on. When did they even get together? Ryan kept his eyes forward, clearly avoiding the question. Claire groaned again. Fine. You won't answer that one? Then answer this. Why did you like me? When did you start? That, Ryan said smoothly. I can answer. The first time I saw you. Claire narrowed her eyes. Don't lie. You said before it wasn't love at first sight. Ryan smirked. And what if it was? Claire tugged on his arm. You're lying. If we met, I would have remembered. Well, you didn't. So maybe it didn't matter to you. But it mattered to me, he said simply. Not good enough, Claire said, planting her feet firmly. She pulled him to a stop, right where the fountain sprayed softly behind them. Then tell me everything, she demanded. I want details. That day I was making a wish. What was I wearing? Had I washed my hair? Did I look amazing? Was it a thunderbolt moment? Tell me. Ryan laughed, eyes twinkling like a man who knew he'd been caught in a trap, but didn't mind at all. Yeah, it was that penguin day. Claire blinked. The penguin? Ryan grinned wider. Yup. The first time I saw you. Right then. You were sitting on the edge of the planter. That stupid hat on the penguin's head. You were taking a picture. And I thought, well, damn. That girl's gonna be trouble. He looked at her, softened. And I hoped she'd be my kind of trouble. Claire tried to recall that moment, really tried, but came up blank. Ryan paused and gave a small shrug. It wasn't anything dramatic, he said plainly. For some reason that disappointed her. She'd secretly hoped she'd been dazzling enough to make a lasting impression. That maybe somehow, in that one moment, she had looked radiant, unforgettable. But apparently not. Claire sighed inwardly, then muttered jokingly, Must have been my wish that moved you so deeply. You mistook it for love. Ryan let out a soft laugh and nodded as if he agreed. What was your wish that day? He asked, curious. Claire blinked. What wish? She couldn't even remember believing in that sort of thing. Honestly, she'd always thought throwing coins into fountains was just a silly superstition. She gave him a skeptical side eye, but let him take her hand as they kept walking. She stayed right beside him, letting the glow of the plaza lights spill across their path. Then out of nowhere Ryan said, You wish for world peace. Claire frowned instantly. She knew herself better than that. If he'd said she wished for chocolate to fall from the sky, or a portal to another dimension made of cake, maybe she could believe it. But world peace? That was too cheesy, even for her teenage self. That's a lie, she grumbled. Ryan West, you're making stuff up again. Ryan raised an eyebrow in mock innocence. Ryan who? Never heard of him. She scoffed. My husband, apparently. Except I don't remember marrying a liar. Sorry, Ryan said with a smug grin, tilting his head toward her. I don't have a husband. Just one wife. The stunning lady walking next to me. As he spoke, he dipped his head low, smile playing on his lips. Claire rolled her eyes. He was obviously dodging the question. But whatever, he loved her. That was enough. She looked up at him, smiling. Wow, what a coincidence. I also only have one husband. And lucky me. He happens to be this ridiculously handsome man walking beside me. There were still people around, the city buzzing behind them. The walk home was long, but she wasn't alone anymore. And neither was he. Her 17, the boy who once only lived in the corners of her notebooks, was now walking right beside her. He wasn't a teenage secret anymore. Not a hidden crush sealed away in the past. Yes, they'd both been too young, too scared, too quiet. But not anymore. Dear listeners, today's emotional love story comes to a close. If it touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel to support our team in bringing more tender, unforgettable stories to life. Wishing you endless joy, gentle days, and a heart always filled with love. Until we meet again in the next story, take care and stay inspired.